Well, it's Monday, and what does that mean? It means it's time for MMOBuff. Hello world, how are we all doing? Everything's been turned upside down a little bit this week. Those of you who are observant will have noticed that either Pseudo's background has mysteriously transported itself across the country, or something else has happened. Something strange and unusual. However, let's say hello to the fine folks that are here for your elucidation and entertainment tonight. Pseudo.
Yes.
This is your chance to say hello. Not yes.
Hi, everybody. I want my office back.
And we also have the Gazimoff.
Yes, you do. Hello there.
You're looking very chipper and excited this afternoon and evening, Gazimoff.
Are you sure? Chipper and excited?
Well, I'm trying to think
Is
of
there really
new
a difference
descriptions.
with you, Gazi? I mean, what do you look like when you get really excited?
I don't know. It hasn't happened.
Oh, wow.
So,
Ouch.
Gazimoff, let's kick off. First of all, let's tell people what we're doing tonight. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about a small, non-controversial, easy-to-understand topic. It's casual versus hardcore. However, before we do that, let's have a little look at, well, let's go for the news. Gazimoff, excite us, entertain us, and educate us.
Well, I'm not sure about those, but I'll do my best to inform you. Let's kick off, first of all, with the news that EVE Online Rubicon is launching on November the 19th, which is tomorrow. This is, I think, the 19th expansion that CCP Games, the producers of EVE Online, have put out, and it marks a slight change of tack for the developer. Previously, expansions have mainly been around providing new ships, new features, and generally trying to get players a bit more involved with fighting against each other. But this one starts the phase of change for them, where they're pushing people out and encouraging them to explore the depths of space a bit more. Rubicon itself adds a couple of new features into the mix, mainly involving, first of all, new ships from the Sisters of Eve faction. They're strongly geared around being faction neutral, but encouraging exploration. But also player-owned stations. They're getting a little bit of a tweak with the addition of some new depots and silos and constructions and so on and so forth, which can be parked almost anywhere and that other players can get involved with and start to investigate and possibly blow up or steal contents from and stuff like that. So it's basically encouraging players to generate more content for each other by putting more things out there that they can play with. So it kind of makes sense, and I'm really interested to see how these new toys in EVE's sandbox take off from tomorrow. But early indications are that people are getting quite a lot of use out of them from the beta servers already. So it should be interesting.
Let's do our usual thing, Gazzy, and pick up on the trend in the news. And yet again, we're seeing an example of the player base being used to create content, to create a gameplay experience.
Yep.
EQ Next, Landmark, obviously, is making great strides there. There were talks about player-generated content in the industry for a couple of years. Have we now reached that point where, in a broad spectrum of games, we're going to start actually seeing this for real?
I think if you've got sandbox-based MMOs, this has always been something that's pretty important. When you're developing a sandbox, you mainly want to make sure that the players are generating content using the tools that you provide. And the sandbox is there only to really basically provide filler around the edges, a little bit of lore, and the various mechanisms for players to interact with each other. So I think that it's a good thing, and I think it's a great thing that sandbox MMOs are becoming a little more mainstream, but I think it's also very imperative to have a carefully grown and cultivated community along with that. That's something that CCP has done masterfully by carefully managing how that community behaves and looks after each other and how they expect the game to work. Sony Online Entertainment have a similar challenge to them when they start introducing EverQuest Next. They're going to really have to work hard introducing both their legacy community with EverQuest to this new structure of game, but also pulling in new players and educating them how sandbox MMOs tend to work. So that should be an interesting one to watch for.
So the answer is possibly a yes, but we need to see where people go beyond the headline titles that we know about at the moment. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned EQ Next, an EQ Next landmark. Is there some news there?
Yes, so there's two things, really.
Is he breaking up horribly for you right now?
He's either breaking up horribly or he's talking in droid.
Involving the PlayStation 4. So Sony launched... I have no idea what's causing this problem, but it is rather distressing.
That is really, really, really weird. It's like...
Tell you what, Gazzy, you seem to be back. The last thing we heard was... So perhaps you could pick it up from that point, which is approximately the bit where you started talking about EQ Next and what they're doing now.
So yes, EverQuest Next and EverQuest Next and a couple of other games have had an interesting piece of news, mostly around the PlayStation 4. So Sony's new console launched in the States last Friday I think it was, and it launches in Europe on the 29th. In an interview recently, John Smedley, the president of Sony Online Entertainment, announced that didn't so much announce, but gave strong hints that the EverQuest Next would be appearing on the PlayStation 4. I think his exact words were, he can't wait for it to be on the console. So that's a fairly strong hint. In terms of what's coming along, we've already seen DC Universe Online appear on the PlayStation 4, and we know that PlanetSide 2 will be on the PlayStation 4 as well. Now, couple that along with Final Fantasy XIV appearing on the console as well sometime early next year, and it really is shaping up to be the console choice for MMO gamers who want to get away from the keyboard and into the living room slightly. So that's going to be an interesting one to follow.
I mean, I don't know your thoughts on it, Pseudo, but we've been able to predict that on the console, obviously for business reasons. It's a massive franchise, there's the strong tie-in there. But not to mention the fact the whole darn control interface at every single point is geared around a control interface that can be mapped onto a console.
As much as I really want to make a comment on this, I've literally just been informed that my little sister just gave birth. So I missed half of what you guys said, and I just saw a picture of my niece, and I'm sorry, but that part of the conversation, I'm just going to have to bow out of for a second because I'm about to break out into tears.
Breaking news on MMOBuff. That's the most
Swagzilla
live
is an
news you've ever
uncle.
yet produced, Gaz.
Sorry, guys. I didn't expect. We knew that she was going to be giving birth today, but the picture just showed up on my screen, and I went, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "I do apologize. I am so sorry, but."
Congratulations to all involved. Live and exciting.
Uncle, don't you mean aunt?
No, it's a joke. My husband and I decided that if she's going to be a part of the gaming family that we are, she has to understand that Auntie Dan, or Dan, as is my husband's name, and Uncle Josie will be taking very, very good care of her with lots of gifts and stuff and swag and plushies.
You have to know the people concerned, Gazimoff.
It's a joke that runs in the family, but yes. But anyway, Swagzilla is an aunt. Oh my god. My first time!
And as Hive Leader says, congratulations. Is it a theme park or a sandbox?
We haven't made the decision yet, but I think it may have to be a sandbox.
Fabulous. Right, Gazimoff, let's rattle through the rest of the news in a quick
Yes.
5 minutes if we can. And then we'll get
Sorry,
into the debate. Meanwhile,
Yes,
we'll just
so-
let Pseudo sit there and discombobulate. I've decided today is the day of the big words.
related-
Carry on.
In other PS4-related news, Bungie, more than Activision, but Bungie have recently announced that their kind of online RPG/MMO thing, Destiny, that's going to be hitting beta on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, and PC before it goes anywhere near one of Microsoft's consoles. this is quite an interesting move, because although I could understand doing it for PlayStation 4 and PC initially, because they're both fairly similar platforms, the fact that they're shunning anything from Redmond, at least initially, is quite a bit of a body blow for them. It might be because the PlayStation 4 has a bit more grunt behind it, but that's pretty much speculation on my part. I think there's probably a little bit more to it that's going on a bit behind the scenes, but that's definitely an interesting take, and it means that fans of the Halo series and stuff like that will probably be looking to gravitate Sony's way. So,
whether that's politics, whether that's development consoles and access,
Well, do you think...
who knows?
Well, see, that's what I was going to say. That seems, it almost sounds like either they tried to do it, but they couldn't either get the APIs correct, or there was something else, or something blocked them from being able to do it. Because I would think in that situation, they'd kind of want to go everywhere and touch all the things. Because, I mean, think about it. If you're going to PC, you're going onto a Windows platform anyway. Because unless the game is specifically designed for Mac, specifically designed for Linux, it's very difficult to get them running on those environments. So the reality is they're not quite shunning Microsoft. What they're more or less sort of saying is the Xbox One is a no for now, but they're still modifying with Windows, so why couldn't they port the Windows version to the Xbox? Is there really that much of a difference?
not really. The only difference between the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, and the PC is in terms of the APIs that you have available, the operating systems that they run on, and the respective power of each box. But in terms of the actual silicon that runs underneath, it's very, very similar. So, yeah, your guess is as good as mine.
We might look into that. So, what more do we have that is out there? I, of course, like others, had the email about the Trailblazer founder. That would have landed, I think, in the last week.
Trailblazer founder? You might have to enlighten me there.
I do believe there's the option to buy into the EQ Next as a EQ Next landmark.
Yes.
As a founder. So you could alpha test
yes.
for them.
So yeah, this has been a little bit of this has been a little bit controversial. This is kind of looping back to the EverQuest Next stuff. So Sony have announced that if you want to get into the alpha for EverQuest Next Landmark, you can pay $100 for their Trailblazer pack and get a load of additional content included, and a couple, well, not so much content, but things, shiny things you can have, items and stuff like that. This is a little bit controversial because it basically means if you pay more, you get access earlier in the game. I'm not sure how I feel about that. In some ways, I've got no qualms at all with people paying more to get early access, because you don't essentially get more stuff in terms of, you don't get more game, you just get bits to build with. And everyone's going to be able to pay for access to the game eventually. In fact, people are going to be able to get it free to play. So I'm not too bothered about it. But at the same time, it basically means that if you want to be one of the first people on the ground, one of the key influences in terms of development and stuff like that, you've got to really put your money where your mouth is. So,
well, in a way, that's sort of like what people expect with things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. I mean, that's what you're basically doing, is you're putting your money where your mouth is. You're devoting some time, etc. And you may see a gorgeous husband of mine walking past me because our dog is being silly, and he's taking care of the dog for me. Things you guys don't normally see, and as you saw, a little tail probably just passed by as she ran for the door. But to me, I have a couple of... Wow,
that's so going to turn up on the
dude.
highlights reel.
Hi, everybody. But I have a problem fundamentally with the way that they're doing it. Now, I had a discussion with a couple of people about the fact that you are paying for free access to an FTP. There you can see where we're doing kitchen work. You see that line right there? That's where we've taken some of the plaster off the wall to fix holes. So now you're all getting get to see an insight into Pseudo's life. But anyway, I had a discussion with a couple of people about the EverQuest Next, the pack, etc. And one of the big concerns that I had with it was the fact that you are basically paying for beta access, which was not really announced until, it's like it wasn't part of their plan. They didn't let anyone know that this was part of their plan, etc. And yet, in a way, it's like people are making a donation to start out in the like almost like a pyramid scheme. You donate money so that you can get access to the tools, so that you can make stuff that you're going to be getting paid for anyway. Because aren't they putting in some kind of way to purchase what people produce?
Potentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The reason I say that you might get a bit more weight as an alpha person is if you spend money to get into into beta earlier, or into alpha as it is, then you're kind of one of a small select few people. Now it might be that crowd is fairly large, but obviously you're in the game that much sooner. So first of all, you can influence development that much earlier, yeah, and it's more likely to have an effect on how developers develop the game if you provide that feedback sooner rather than later. But also, I don't think you're going to have any advantage over the beta players once beta goes live. Don't get me wrong there. I think an alpha and a beta person would have just as loud a voice, but just by dint of being in the alpha rather than the beta, I think you will get more influence for that window of time between alpha and beta access.
It's a more appropriate part of the development cycle.
Yeah, and because it's a smaller group of people, again, your percentage of voice will be bigger as well. So I think for that element, it's you're going to have a bigger shout. But I think if you're investing more money in it, why not?
The disc brings up a rather interesting point. He says being able to buy into the beta helps combat the sale of keys and scams that's plaguing WildStar at the moment.
Yep.
And, in a way that makes a hell of a lot of sense. I don't necessarily agree with how expensive their pack happens to be, but,
There's
I mean, if someone said to me, you can pay $100 or £100 because it money conversion type of a thing, and you can get access to WildStar right now in the beta, I'd actually feel really awkward. I really would.
Yeah, the problem with paid access to alphas and betas is that generally they don't come with an NDA attached. You're paying money to get into a beta, so generally there's no NDA there. Now, if you've got something like EverQuest Next Landmark, you haven't got a lot of stuff to reveal. People already know, roughly speaking, what to expect, and most of the work's going to be in the nuts and bolts and mechanics of actually putting things there. With WildStar, it's much more different. Because it's more of a theme park than a sandbox, you've got all of the different parts of the theme park that you might be testing, but you don't want revealed to the public at large. And if you're selling access to your theme park before it's completely unveiled, then you run the risk of basically people say, these are all of the rides in the theme park that the developers haven't told you about. They might not be ready for prime time. They might be under development. They might be experimenting with them and probably strip them out and replace them completely. But if they've told them to the public at large, say, this is part of your theme park and it's not all that good, then the developers lose the initiative. Yep. And that's why...
If later on health and safety is deemed that said ride needs to be removed, people are going to shout because it's not there anymore.
I kind of see the point behind that, but at the same time, I think that as long as a company is blunt, like WildStar has been, I mean, we always extolled the greatness of at least the way that Carbine is bringing out information about WildStar, etc. They haven't kidded. They're one of those companies, and we've talked about it in a previous show where we said, hey, these guys have said this was an idea, it didn't work, we cut it out. They're very open with the fact that half the stuff you see right now, if you happen to be in one of the betas, you're not going to see because they're going to make modifications based on the feedback that they're getting from everybody. And, the fact that they're saying that is great, but not a lot of companies are willing to sit there and go, this theme park ride is sucky. We're removing it. It's not going to work. We're going to find something else to replace it. It's not doing what it should do. We thought it would, but it didn't. There aren't many companies actually being that open. So there's also the difference there with that.
Balancing act. Just to pick up on a comment in the chat, I think it's time to dive into the topic du jour. People are mentioning the interest in games in beta, such as WildStar. I'm talking about buying keys and the prices they go for. Gotta say, guys, not the best idea in the world. Game devs are smart. They don't want people buying keys. To me, it's a little like trying to turn around and buy a magic wallet full of cash that mysteriously disappears the morning after you've bought it. I wouldn't go there. To be honest, if someone's selling, purporting to sell beta keys, how do we know if they're real, if they're not real, if they're going to work, if they've already been banned? And if someone's prepared to break NDA, break rules, break everything else, and try and sell something that they're clearly not allowed to sell, you really going to trust them to purchase or support them? Gotta be a no on my part. So, with that, I think it's time to go into the topic du jour. And let's start like this, just for a moment. Oh my god, it's me. Right, there we go. So, the topic of the day is casual versus hardcore. Interesting words, interesting terms. What on earth do they actually mean? And people tend to use those words in several ways. They tend to describe a player's ability. That's tended to happen these days. It tends to discuss someone's commitment to a game. That can be in terms of time sink, but it can also be in terms of what sort of guild they're with, what sort of attitude they have. Play styles can be covered by those two terms. But the interesting thing, let's start with this. The word hardcore has many connotations. So, Pseudo, what does the word hardcore mean to you?
This is interesting because I had someone contact me about the fact that they found out the show's topic was hardcore versus casual. A friend of mine out in Seattle who unfortunately can't watch because he's at work, so I'm just going to say hello, Nards. Basically, he said, don't forget about us casual core people. And I'm like, okay, what exactly do you mean? He goes, well, I'm talking about the people who want to, say, dedicate 1 to 2 nights of raid and actually do some kind of progression stuff. And I'm kind of like, that to me doesn't even come close to what I would define as hardcore to begin with. So it's obvious there's a whole bunch of different
so I'm going to play nasty host tonight and try and keep us on a little bit of a schedule and answer the questions. Well, more so than normal. So Pseudo, a concise definition to you. What does hardcore mean?
Someone who's willing to put time and effort into themselves to benefit others, usually in a group format like raiding.
Okay.
Now, time can be as simple as an hour to 4 hours, depending upon game context, etc. So just someone who's willing to put the time and effort in.
Let's take that definition. Gazimoff, same question to you. Hardcore, what does it mean?
Okay. Hardcore is someone who spends a large proportion of their real-life time, so not just game time, but real-life time, devoted to a particular aspect of a particular game. So for example, if you spend 6 out of 7 nights doing raiding in World of Warcraft, I would call you a hardcore raider. If you spend the vast majority of your time when you're at home, instead of watching TV or something like that, logged into Battlefield 4 and playing Battlefield 4, I would call you a hardcore Battlefield 4 player. The difference isn't so much in terms of your particular skill level. I would say it is the amount of time as a proportion of your overall leisure time that you devote to a particular aspect of a particular game.
So let's try something quickly then. So a typical definition.
What's your answer?
My answer for hardcore would be someone that spends a disproportionate percentage of their time to the point where everything else goes by the wayside. I actually personally attach a negative connotation to the term hardcore. I would not describe myself in a gaming context as being hardcore. And we'll get into this in a moment, in that everyone has a different definition, and the broadness causes issues. But let's try this for a moment. So, yes, no's, Gazimoff, if someone raids 7 nights a week for 4 hours a night in Game X, are they hardcore?
Yes, I've done it.
Pseudo, yes, no?
It depends, but I would state probably not. The thing is, it depends on how they do it. There's a huge difference to me between someone who just throws their body at a boss repeatedly 7 nights a week versus someone who is willing to put the time and dedication in to ensure that they know strategies and everything else. If they are just throwing their bodies, to me, they're not hardcore.
Okay.
If they're actually putting the time and effort into understanding things and working out mechanics and stuff, that makes them hardcore.
So what I was going to do here was turn around and say, well, 6 nights. Okay, how about 5 nights? What about 4 nights? And see where that cutoff was to people. But you bring something interesting into the mix straight away. And I'm going to touch on this and come back to it, that you're actually positioning skill as being part of, or skill and dedication as being part of
Dedication,
the equation.
not necessarily skill.
Okay, I'm going to
Because
pose another
I firmly
question.
believe someone. That's the thing. I firmly believe someone could be hardcore if they are putting the effort in. They may not be the Twitch person who gets the headshot every time or the knife kill. Just because you're not quote unquote the top of the leaderboard does not mean you're not hardcore. If you are putting the time, the effort, and the dedication in, to me, you are hardcore.
Yeah. Someone raised an interesting point in chat, saying if they spent the same amount of time but they devoted it to running the auction house and playing the market, would they be a hardcore econ player? I would say absolutely. If you were spending the amount of time following trends, following the market, researching what the best materials are to craft and to put up there on the market, and you spend the vast majority of your time doing that to end up with a big fat pile of cash, yes, absolutely, you are a hardcore for that particular aspect of the game.
Well, you're not just a hardcore, you're at this point, you're now a rich hardcore player. But that's another story.
Not necessarily. You could be failing miserably as the markets crash.
Fair enough. I'm going to switch us to three ways just for a moment. So we've started throwing in the idea of skill as part of the descriptor for this. And that can be turned on its head to do something even more interesting. Because hardcore has what appears to be its polar opposite, and that is casual. And as people turn around and attribute a high skill level to the word hardcore, what's happening in the community is a low skill level is being attributed to the word casual. So in the minds of many people, casual becomes synonymous with bad, noob, poor, unskilled,
Lazy.
undergeared, lazy, eating a pizza with one hand, drinking a coffee with one hand, and I don't know how they're controlling the mouse and don't want to ask, type descriptions of players. So how can we remove, or should we remove, and I'm going to start by saying yes we should, how do you remove the negative connotations from the word casual if you're going to appropriate positive connotations in terms of skill to the word hardcore? Gazimoff.
I think that casual players aren't necessarily lower skilled. I think they might be slightly lower in commitment, some of them, mainly in terms of the time investment that's required to do research and to really fine-tune things on the knife edge and to tweak their play styles and stuff like that. Because doing things like hardcore raiding isn't just about being in the raids 7 nights a week. It's all the ancillary stuff that comes to one side. You can still practice your skill and have all the basic hygiene factors there and still be a successful raider on a casual basis. I would say that you've really got 3 categories rather than 2. You've got the hardcore guy that treats it as his main reason for doing what he does. You've got the casual person who might do it 2 or 3 times a week but still puts in a fair amount of effort. And you've got Pondlife at the bottom, basically, who are unskilled, are running around dancing on mailboxes and what have you, and who fire up LFR because they really couldn't get anywhere else at all if they want to. And they're not the kind of guys who are good in LFR. They're the kind of guys who are sitting there pressing one button and always denting at the bad.
And sadly for them, that button wasn't actually keybound to anything at all that functioned in the game.
No.
However,
No.
So we've got a couple of things going on. Let me jump back to three-way. And you've raised the most interesting word of all, and that is you've used the word commitment. So let's talk about let's go back in time a little bit, and let's put myself on the chopping block. This is probably the easiest way to do this, so you'll have fun with this one. So I've already said that I don't actually like the word hardcore personally. I could get behind the word if there was a unified definition that had the right connotations. To me, currently, it doesn't. Nor do I like the word casual. So consider this. To me, someone that deserves a positive connotation in an MMO game would have to display the following very difficult to achieve characteristics. Firstly, my personal belief is someone putting a significant time commitment into gaming should be doing so in a way that is not damaging to themselves or to those around them. Call me boring. Maybe it should be no one else's business, but if I put my guild leader hat on, I kind of want to know that the person that's spending 50 hours a week isn't actually busy dropping out of their first degree and everything else because they're just in a bad place and perhaps need a little bit of help. So let's put that one to one side. What should be happening? You should understand your class intimately. That means you should be at top level Utilising training dummies, to use the WoW example. You should actually understand the formulas behind your damage. You should actually understand what every stat means, what its ratios are, and how it interacts with every other stat. You should know instinctively what happens if you take off 20 points of Agi and put on 20 points of Spirit, and actually be able to say, this is what it's going to mean to me in terms of my rotations and my player choices, and not have to go anywhere near a website or a spreadsheet to understand that. Why? Because you've built those spreadsheets yourself before. You've used those sites yourself before. You have in your head exactly what drop you want from every single part of the game to work out your character. And you've probably got different rotations in mind for when you hit certain stat numbers and priorities. You are raiding X nights a week, but whatever X is, you're reliable, you're there on time, you're geared, you're kitted, you understand what you're doing, and you're responsive. Put someone, and you're possibly, as a result of all that, doing well on whatever the meters are, but in a raid the meters aren't your focus. So you put all of that together to a person, and maybe they're raiding 3 nights a week, but they're doing a lot of other work outside of those 3 nights. That, to me, is the connotation, the label that should deserve a positive connotation. But is it hardcore? Because I wouldn't describe, I could probably turn around and say, yep, that describes me raiding, but I don't call myself hardcore. Pseudo.
I'm going to throw a huge thing, or at least in my opinion, a spanner into your definition. I think it is incredibly unfair to a player to state that you would expect them to make their own spreadsheets. The ability for people to pull together all the information, mix it up in their own brain, and come up with their own solution, I think makes a better player than someone who sits there and goes, I've got all this stuff, I've done the stats. Not everybody has a mathematical degree. Not everybody has a skill set that has the ability to synthesize that amount of information quickly. So if you're going to even come close to using that as a positive part of the definition, I'm going to have to state no. I disagree with that part of your definition.
Let me clarify that. Does someone have to have built a spreadsheet? No. Do I want someone to understand their class to a strong enough level? And that would be typified by a person that has used spreadsheets and websites and actually understands things. I mean, we've had raiders in Guild before who are not mathematical in the slightest. They're never going to turn around and run a spreadsheet. They're not even particularly comfortable using, gear optimization websites and bits and pieces. But what they've done is communicated with people in Guild, spent a ton of time and effort, and walked away with a very solid understanding in their own head so they can make the right choices. Mathematical, no.
To me, that's
Smart,
still
yes.
To me, if you want to put that as a definition, should be a part of it. But the thing is, you were
definition. No, I said typical.
Okay,
would be typified by.
I'm just saying, you were throwing in there someone who takes their time, knows their spreadsheets, and knows what agility and spirit will do because they built their own spreadsheets. That is completely different and very unfair to the people who don't have those mathematical, drives, yet have the ability to turn to someone and go, you know what, I don't quite understand this. Can we talk?
Yeah.
Let's debate this out. Can we do some
on the
testing
same
together?
page, Pseudo.
That, to me, deserves to be a part of the positive definition.
Oh, it is. Let's sum it up then by saying you have to walk away with the correct understanding by whatever means it is you choose to do so.
I am going to also throw a spanner on correct understanding because I have seen
got the incorrect
many people play the
you
same
cannot
class.
be as valuable.
I have seen many people play the same class with relatively similar internet connections, have a complete, basically exactly the same piece of gears, so they're technically speaking, same race, same everything. We're talking WoW here now. And I have seen them come at it from 2 completely different angles that was right for what they did. So, it's really a matter of a person being able to take, I should say, responsibility for themselves, the character they're playing, and what they're bringing forward, and doing what it takes in a positive manner to ensure a successful outcome.
I'm still going to suggest that someone needs to understand the basis of their build, their choices, their rotation, their gear, whatever it might be. And that whatever mechanism you use to achieve that understanding, if you don't actually have a solid understanding, how are you capable of making logical choices that are correct? But Gazimoff, you got us going at it hammer and tongs here. Your thoughts?
I was just going to say, there is a huge difference between the quote-unquote right way and an understanding of where someone is at with their character currently based on what is available in-game.
They're exactly the same thing. If you're optimal, you're making the right choices.
Not in my eyes.
I'm going
when
to
you start
disagree
using
with you.
right and
Gazimoff.
wrong, people are going to...
Let's have your take. Else Gazimoff will just sit there in the corner looking sad.
It's lovely having you back, Mizpah. It's lovely having you back.
So,
Split the difference, Gazimoff. Who's right?
So here's my take on it. If you have, there are certain fundamental things that you need to know about a particular class in order to be able to play that class even remotely effectively. I'll give you an example. Rogues with spirit gear. Why? Yeah, and I've seen it happen.
I had it live on one of our minion streams. It was rather interesting.
It was
made a rogue with spirit gear.
Okay, interesting is a polite way of looking at it. Bloody wrong is a slightly more accurate way of putting it. Now, however they get corrected, whether it's something that they've discovered themselves, whether they plug themselves into Ask Mr. Robot, whether someone's taken them to one side and said, look, you shouldn't be doing that, this is a more effective way of doing it, doesn't matter. But the fact that they've said, my DPS is crap, I need to do something about it, can you give me some help? That's fine, that's fantastic. But they've gone out of their way to improve themselves and get better at the game and given themselves an understanding. Once they reach that level, that threshold, that's the important thing. It's the ignoramuses who say, no, I'm going to keep spirit on my rogue gear because I want the regen. Why? For those people, there is no help. They are a lost cause. They are going to spend an eternity in the Pondlife hitting LFR and wandering and keyboard turning as well.
Pseudo,
keyboards turn in today's day and age.
You look a little aghast. What's your thoughts on keyboard turning?
Well, okay. If you are a keyboard turner, and I can tell you are a keyboard turner, then, man, we have mice, you know, and we can move with the mice. And straight.
I think we may have found Gazimoff's kryptonite. Keyboard turning is apparently Gazimoff's kryptonite.
No.
Now, I'm actually going to throw something into the mix now that might surprise people for a long time. For the longest time, because of the way I used to go, it's a couple of years, including decent level raiding. Excuse me, choking away. I was very keyboard centric, and I didn't really stop being keyboard centric until I found mice with all the buttons on the sides of them. Things like this lovely little Razer device here. However, for the longest time, people did not believe that I functioned just off the keyboard, and I did. And I could actually raid and top the DPS meters off the keyboard. So I actually won't say that running off the keyboard is impossible. I will say that the percentage of people that do it and do it to the same skill level are very, very small, but isn't impossible.
I would say that there's one important thing and one very important difference. There's a whole world of difference between keyboard turning and keyboard strafing. And this is something that maybe my first-person shooter background taught me, was that you do not turn with the keyboard, you strafe with the keyboard and you turn with the mouse. Otherwise you end up with a pile of dead.
Yes, I mean, I'm still using the right mouse button and flicking to turn. I mean, but everything else that people are going, well, use the mouse, do this, do that. No, I can do it all on the keys just fine, thank you very much.
The thing is, I think it's a matter of skill set. It's a matter of also functionality. I know some people who are keyboard turners, and they are scary good at what they do. And you probably wouldn't be able to tell off the bat that they are keyboard turners. But the thing is, there is a difference, I guess, like we were saying, when it comes to hardcore, casual, and Pondlife, which seems to be the three spectrums we're playing with here. There is a difference between someone who just sits there and goes, oh, I'm supposed to go left, and instead I'm going to press forward, and then I'm going to turn, and then I'm going to move forward, and not keep their character moving at the exact same time while they're doing all this turn. There's a difference between that versus someone who's, say, strafing to the left, etc. And my dog is, sorry, just bit my toe. But yes, I mean, there is a difference between, there's a reason I have an office, Mizpah, and you are in it. You know. But anyway, there's a difference between using keyboard turning in a skillful manner versus not doing it in a skillful manner, which just actually brings us right back to our discussion. There is a connotation behind having a skill set and having a certain level of skill before one could have, say, even a negative connotation of hardcore applied to them or a positive connotation of hardcore applied to them. A certain level of skill is being mentioned. Now, some people can be very skillful keyboard turners. I'm just saying.
Okay, so after letting Pseudo talk and realising I had the focus on Gazimoff still, sorry Gazimoff, let's jump back to the three-way just for a moment. And let's try and wrap a conclusion around this, and I think it's time to go and do a bit of a post-show. We've not had a good post-show for a while. Mainly because I've been running around in sunnier climes. Let's
Do you want me to punch him in the throat when the show is over, Gazzy?
No,
I can just literally walk right upstairs.
in the face. I want to see bruises, you know?
I've
I
got
want to
bruises.
see, like, bag of ice on the head, you know? That
So-
kind of stuff.
I can't hurt him.
Let's try and wrap up a conclusion. So here's my first take on the matter, and then I'm going to ask people for an alternate definition. I'm going to propose, first of all, the current definitions of casual and hardcore are bad. They are toxic, they are detrimental to the community of gamers as a whole. They pigeonhole people, they stereotype people, and because to every single person they have a different connotation, they are effectively useless and are only capable of being used in a negative and derisory fashion. I think that as gamers, we need to turn around, take back hold of these definitions and put meaningful things on them. I'm now going to vote for hardcore, casual core, casual, and Pondlife. And every single negative, toxic definition, be it applied to the hardcore through to the casual ends of the spectrum, that has the negative connotations needs to go into Pondlife. Hardcore should be repurposed to mean someone that puts a suitable amount of dedication, commitment, and I'm going to use the word research into their characters, are the people that should get to walk around with the badge hardcore, and that it should be positive. And if you're capable of being a hardcore raider, player, money marketeer, whatever it might be, but you only play 2 days a week, but you use that time smartly, fair play to you. If you're casual, meaning you have very little time, you want to learn the basics, you don't want to upset others, you don't want to understand the minutiae of your class, and maybe you do have lots of time, actually, but you aren't interested in layers and layers of depth and complexity. You want to have fun, but you're a good social person to be around. Walk around with that casual badge with pride. There is nothing wrong with it at all. And of course, we now have the casual core term that's been coined, which is somewhere between the two. You're always looking to learn and improve, but you're not necessarily going to go off and do tons of research by yourself. All of those are fine. And I'm going to leave redefining Pondlife to you, Gazimoff, because you did it oh so well. But we should start a movement. We should reclaim those terms. We should redefine them. And we should get rid of the arrogance, crass stupidity, and toxicity that's associated with those words across the gaming spectrum. Gazimoff.
Okay. So, I think someone who is hardcore is, as you said, investing an awful lot of time, energy, and commitment into doing what they do above and beyond other things that might take up their life. Okay? So I'm talking about the guys who are playing 6 or 7 nights a week. I'm talking about the guys who are missing out on a lot of other things because what they do with their particular game is their thing, if you like. It's what they build their life around almost. And I think that's the important distinction to make. I think a casual player, you might call them casual core, you might call them casual. There's a wide spectrum of people, from those who are committed to what they want to do but don't want to have the life commitment. And I think they're just as entitled to say they play the game seriously, but they don't play it to the be-all and end-all of everything else. I also think that you've got the casual player in there who wants to take a little bit of their foot off the gas and enjoy things and be a bit more relaxed, but not have to worry too much about getting everything right. And they'll use helper systems like Ask Mr. Robot and so on where they want to. You've also got the lower end of the spectrum, the casual player who's not interested in playing at that level, doesn't really want to, but just wants to be a part of the game and have fun and socialize. And there is nothing wrong at all with those people. Pondlife, at the very far end, are the people who actively fight against everything you are trying to achieve. So they are the people who try and throw themselves into raids, but refuse to do any research because it's too cumbersome or it's too difficult. They are the willful ignorant of MMO gaming, the people who refuse point blank to better themselves and just feel that they should be present and able to partake in the content by dint of having an avatar and being able to log in. Those are the people I think should be confined to that bottom tier. And those are the people who I don't think really add anything at all, be it social, be it tactical, be it just pleasant to be around within gaming.
I think that sums that up pretty well. Pseudo, your thoughts, your take. What are you going to leave us with on the topic?
Well, one thing I'm going to say is I do like this concept of reclaiming words. I do believe that there is, however, so much of a opinion from everyone and a perspective as to what they believe hardcore is, what they believe casual is, what they even believe Pondlife to be, with our terming and everything else that goes with it. I will state this, though. I firmly believe that someone can be hardcore even if they only are dedicating 2 days a week. I don't think time should be really a part of the definitions. I definitely think it should be the dedication, the passion, the drive that becomes a part of the definitions more so than anything else. If you desire to dig deep and open up that can of worms and figure out why using spirit as a rogue is bad, instead of just simply accepting it's bad, but actually doing your own little tests or just researching what other people's experiences are or anything else like that, that can help put you into the hardcore thing. Does it make you hardcore? Not quite. Hardcore to me are the people who are willing to put all their dedication and effort into what it is they're trying to accomplish in the game. Be it do all of the quests. You could be a hardcore lore master. There's nothing wrong with that. If that is your core focus and you're putting your time and your dedication into it, I think that makes you hardcore. And now what I say when I use time, I don't mean 6 nights a week, 7 nights a week. What I just simply mean by that is the time that you have to play the game is spent in a manner that is constantly improving your character, constantly improving your play style, and constantly driving you toward whatever your end goal happens to be. Be it auction house taking over, or raiding, or PvP arena number 1, whatever it may be.
Okay.
So
I'm going to leave you with a thought, let people sign off, and we'll come back for the post-show, because there's a great conversation going on here that I want to pick up on. But if I take it into the live show now, this show is going to be 17 and a half hours long, and that's not going to work very well for editing. Sorry, Shinogi. Anyhow, you know what? Someone at the Dist just said, is this important? Why do these terms matter? In one sense, they shouldn't matter. They're cliques, they're stereotypes, they're memes, and no, they shouldn't matter, but human nature is such that we like to classify stuff and put it into buckets. And you classify something and say, this is a big bucket, therefore, as developers, we need to support people that live in this bucket. No, I don't live in a bucket, but we all know what I mean. So, definitions are important, but if the definitions have the ability to be toxic, then people need to push back and go, hey, is this really on? Should this really be happening? So, I'm going to take that into the post-show. I'm going to sign off. Before I do that, I'm going to leave you with one thought. How do I want to be described? As a passionate MMO gamer. It's as simple as that. Pseudo, say goodbye.
I want to be known as a passionate gamer and a swagzilla. Remember, folks, we've got that competition going.
In fact, we should talk about that in just a moment. We will come back and talk about the competition before we close. Gazimoff.
Yes, I just want to be a passionate gamer. Toodle pip.
How do you want to be known? Gazimoff the Excited, clearly.
No.
Is Gazimoff unimpressed?
Pseudo. Let's have a quick 2 minutes on the wondrous competition of wonderfulness that is in fact quite wonderful.
Yes, my lair has amazing coffee for things. But my lair has some amazing prizes inside it. If you go to MMOBuff.TV, you will see a lovely bit of information about what you need to do to raid my lair of swag. Now, yeah, there is some amazing gifts in there, and I'm going to let you know that throughout the week, some extra prizes might be added to each of the individual packs, including the legendary, including the epic, and including the rare.
Is it
Make
live
certain
yet,
you get involved.
Is it live on the site yet?
Oh, yes. Front page.
So, folks, go there. Let's just quickly put a little bit of around this particular competition. I was lucky enough to come back from BlizzCon with some wondrous t-shirts signed by a number of the WoW devs and the Hearthstone devs. We also have a number of complete boxed packs of the WoW rebrand. Used to be called the Battle Chest, but now it's everything up to but not including Mop, Mr. Pandera. And we might just be adding some more things into those prizes. So we've come up with a I think we've called it Legendary Prize, an Epic Prize, a Rare Prize, and then I think there's 3 more Uncommon Prizes, or whatever we want to term them.
Nope.
They're just prizes, are they?
Nope, nope, nope. What you have is you have Legendary, Epic, and Rare.
Okay, but
That's
there's
it.
6.
And one of them gets a plushie.
Yes.
So just understand, whoever wins Legendary, I'm going to be so jealous of you,
Yep.
it's not even funny.
Legendary includes one singular of the sold out little Murloc plushie from BlizzCon. The one that was sold out within hours of it opening.
Little merc guy.
I do believe we're about to see one, are we, Gaz?
No. I've only
Oh, you've
got
got the
one of other
Baneling.
ones.
You got the Baneling.
I have the Baneling.
We're giving away the Murloc. We're giving away a complete WoW pack, and you have to retweet and choose whether you're Horde or Alliance. There is one Horde t-shirt, there is one Alliance t-shirt, and I'm going to be speaking to the nice folks from at Blizz headquarters, HQ even, and seeing what else we might be able to throw into the mix, because there were some good announcements at BlizzCon, and I think there's some stuff there people might be excited by, so watch this space. However, it's time to sign out. It's time to do post-show. So, Gazimoff, say goodbye for the second time.
Goodbye.
Pseudo.
Bye-bye, guys. See you guys at the town hall tonight. Or at least the NA one.
Mizpah, passionate gamer. Signing out. See you for the post-show. Cheers, folks. It's been a blast as always. Beware the carrots of doom. No? Okay. Nothing like that.